Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Coach Dan John and I have been embarking on a journey back in time, exploring the legendary tale of The Sword and the Stone and its profound connection to the world of education. We're not just unraveling the magic behind Excalibur, but also dissecting the educational theories of open and closed loop methods and how they resonate with Arthur's transformative journey. What can we learn from T.H. White's writing about adapting to different learning styles? Whether you're a teacher, a student, or just someone curious about the intersection of legend and learning, this episode promises to unravel the ties between the Sword and the Stone and the educational quest for knowledge. I am grateful to Dan for taking me on this journey, and whether or not you're a fan of the book, our discussions are relevant to everyone. For those that don't already know, Coach Dan John is a world-renowned strength coach and mentor to many in the fitness industry. Dan has competed at the highest levels of Olympic lifting, Highland Games, and the weight pentathlon. He has authored numerous books and continues to educate through his coaching and workshops worldwide. I am grateful to call Dan a friend and love the opportunity to learn from him. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please share this podcast with others and rate it on your platform of choice. You can also take one extra step to show your love and appreciation by donating to the show on my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate you. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Dan.
Hello, how are you?
I am so good. It's so good to see you. It's been a bit.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And it's funny. I don't think I travel as much as I used to, but I'm gone all the time. So I must be just getting better at travel, and I honestly couldn't say much more than that,
Yeah, I feel like our schedules have been a little bit, you're out or I'm out. And so there's been a bit of back and forth, but it's lovely to see you now. And we're recording this like right after Christmas. So I hope your holidays are going well and you're getting some downtime and relaxation, maybe.
Well, yeah, all the above, some of the above, none of the above. It was fun. It was we had a rough Christmas last year.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So this year, it was nice. It was kind of more like we used to do things. We played games, and Kelly got herself a puppy, and she's also watching a puppy for a friend. So, I spent much of Christmas Eve rolling around on the floor playing with puppies, and it was just a lot of fun. There's something marvelous about rolling around on the ground, being attacked by puppies. It wasn't too long ago. I was rolling around on the ground with Leo, my grandson, on Christmas Eve, and so it was nice. I seem to spend a lot of time rolling on the ground.
Well, because you can.
Either with puppies or or with babies. Either way, I like it, and it's kind of fun. I was looking at some pictures of it seems like 100 years ago, but it was only 2. Leo and I are just laying on the ground and kind of rolling around, and it just happens so fast, So
it does. Good. Yeah. What kind of, I'm sorry?
I hope yours was good too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely. I'm fortunate, my family's all well. We got to spend time together. That's what's important. And, ate good food, but not overindulged, which is always nice because, the holidays become that, oh my gosh, we have to eat all the things we never eat for some reason on these 3 days. But it was very nice. Thank you. Yeah. I was going to ask you, what kind of games do you guys play? Like board games, or are there?
Yeah, we play all the board games. We used to play a lot more Yahtzee. Now we play more of a card game called golf. And then there's also this thing called Jackbox TV, and there's a murder mystery, and there's another one called Fibbage. And those two I really like the games. The murder mystery is a bit of a trivia game with funny little side games, and Fibbage is you're just trying to put answers in to trick your friends, and they're just fun. And we haven't really played a lot of the classic games. I love Yahtzee. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm a big fan of. Can you see that? There's my Connect Four. And there's my tic-tac-toe, and right here's my chessboard. So even in my office here, I have it's interesting because, when I'm working with young coaches, I'll often ask them about tic-tac-toe. And
Okay.
I'll also try to get them in. Have you played checkers? Have you played chess? Is great, but there's a big learning curve. But I think that Connect Four is one of the best things for a coach to play, because when this one has got the black and red, and the one we have upstairs is green and yellow. But you drop two whatever they're dots or whatever the coins or whatever they are, and all of a sudden the whole game changes. And that's kind of what coaching is about. You had this nice plan, but this happened, so you have to instantly adapt to new. And I think there's good life lessons, great life lesson, and it's also in the Matthew Broderick film War Games.
Mhm.
Play tic tac toe. If you play it 20 times, you're done. The game is over. Neither person wins. I think it's called a cat's game.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm trying to play 1,000 games of checkers with my computer, and I'm up to about the low 600s. And I'm just trying to. The computer is smarter than I am, but it has a fatal flaw. It must always take a piece when it can. And I don't know how to talk to it and tell them not to do that, but it always takes a piece. So by sacrificing one of my pieces, I can always not always. I win about 78% of the time. That's what
Mm.
you know per every 100 games, it's about 78. And people go, how do you keep beating this computer? I go, because it has a fatal flaw. It
Yeah.
must always take. There's a life lesson there somewhere.
Mhm.
There is a life lesson there. If you always have to be number one, if you always have to be right, makes me think of someone I cared very deeply about, who always had to be right, to the sacrifice to even relationships.
Yeah.
And sometimes just because yeah, you can be right about a lot of things and be wrong about what's really important. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, nice segue, but there's my coaching 101. Okay.
I love it. No, and it's just so much fun when you mention the games like tic-tac-toe and Connect Four, because those are actually games that I know. Whenever I talk to my students and they're telling me anything they're playing, I'm usually lost, completely lost. So I'm very excited to be able to understand what board games we're talking about. And I have to say, my favorite thing was like taking all the coins out, like when you slide the thing and then they all fall out.
Yeah, when they all pop out. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a little. It's got this little red, little
Like a
knob.
lever, yeah, and you just slide it. It's very satisfying to me.
Yeah,
I enjoy that. I enjoy the clean slate. Maybe that's like telling about me. I just want to start over. So I like it. I like it, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the strategy on Connect Four for coaches, because that could be a good thing to introduce, because I think you're right. We get very set on what we set out to do, our routine, our way, our path. This is what I had planned. And this is, any coach or instructor or teacher knows, like, it's good to have a plan, but you should have the flexibility to make adjustments, right?
right. And I moved away from chess because it's a hard game, and the way that's played now, before Alpha Zero, everyone just memorized everything.
Oh,
But starting with Bobby Fischer and now with Alpha Zero, Bobby Fischer, before he died, would play people, and he would move. He would break the rules. He would move his king early, because all those memorized things that his opponents would do were now worthless.
ah,
I think that's, yeah. You almost become, if you do this and I do this and then you do this, so I do that. You're an automaton. You're a robot. You're not thinking. You're just. And I like the strategy. I like thinking. I like playing. I like, I thought I would do this, but you did that, so I have to change if I want, because the rules are simple. When you connect four, you win. So even though I had this beautiful thing set up, I lost because you just put four in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. You win. Yeah.
do you play this with your athletes or like with your coaches that you teach?
Coach,
Like,
if someone asks me to help them,
yeah.
one of the things I'll do is we'll have, maybe we'll go through. I'll have them. Usually, I give them a few reading assignments, and most of the time they don't do that, and so I fire them
Yeah.
because they're not really motivated. Um, but if they do come, if they do spend some time with me, I'll break, especially those two, the tic tac toe and then the Connect Four. Um, Interesting. I've had many coaches who've never even heard of Connect Four, European coaches, but then they'll know it by another name or something similar.
Oh, okay.
Uh, it'll be fun, but the idea is still the key. Is that you have to play your opponent, yes, but things change and you have to adapt like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
fun.
Do you find that it teaches you a lot about that person and how they play? Like, do people surprise you even because the moves are so simple and there's only so many you can really do, but I feel like you might learn a lot in personality.
Yeah, I guess if somebody just can't figure out that the rule is to Connect Four,
It's
maybe
a problem.
maybe there's another job in life for you besides being a head coach.
And also like reacting, right? Like how
Yeah,
competitive they can get.
yeah. But you can see it sometimes. There was a coach for the 49ers about a decade or so ago who just put his head down and said, "This is the way we're going to do it," and it didn't work.
Mm.
And he kept saying, "Well, we're going to do it this way," and it didn't work. And he kept saying, "We're going to do it this way," and it didn't work. So part of our job sometimes, no matter what we're doing, is you got to change. I'm sure if you talk to movie producers or actors or whatever, they've probably been in a situation in their life where someone said, "That's not working. You got to do it this way." No, I'm going to do it my way. And you got to be very good and very, very lucky to just have one way to do everything.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of John Candy and Splash, if you know the film, but we're
Of
not going
course. I often say what a week I'm having because of the Eugene Levy role, where he keeps like trying to catch her in the picture and yeah.
to. Well, should we get going on our book?
Yes, yes. So for those who are joining us or wondering, okay, of course we have the world-renowned coach Dan John, who knows all things strength training, fitness, and coaching. He is also an expert in the Sword and the Stone, and he has been so gracious to take me on this journey with him. And we have made it up to chapter 10 of the Sword and the Stone, and this is fun because it starts the adventure in the woods with Robin Wood, and we meet Marion, which was exciting because it's our first leading lady, strong female character role. Kind of only female, one of the only female characters that are centered in terms of this light and how we see her. And it actually, I think, has a lot to do with coaching this meeting because they have the arrow contest where they start being very competitive and so very exciting that we are jumping back into our book.
A couple things real quick is that chapters 10, 11, and 12 are unique
Yes.
in that they are it's a start to finish adventure that carries over 3 chapters. There is magic throughout the chapter, but not Merlin's magic. So by the time we get to this chapter, Sir Kay is jealous because Wart has all the fun, and by the time we get to this chapter, 2 of the most important transfigurations have happened. That would be the fish transformation and the hawk transformation. Well, I mean, it's interesting because in both the fish and the hawk, the lessons in those stories are about like being disciplined, about military, about might makes right versus right makes right. With this story in the middle, in real time, the boys are in danger. There's a chance they can die. Now, depending on what book you have, whether it's the 1958 version, the 1938 version, the 1939 version, the stories change enough that I will get confused on this as we're talking. Don't take that wrong. Okay. The original version, she's not an attractive thing. She's not attractive at all. And the animals are much more vicious. And the anthropomorphs, those human-like creatures, the skyops and all of them, are truly evil, horrible things. And it eases up as the story. When it comes to America in the 39 version, it's a lot softer. And by the time you get to the 58 version, it's a little bit more of a fairy tale. Why do I spend all that time going? Because this story sits in the middle of the book. This story is, if you read stories like, they call it chiasms, but I don't know what your teacher would have called it in school, but it's when you make a story like a mountain. So you have the beginning and the end sort of have parallels.
Mm-hmm.
Is
the arc?
The second part of the book and the fourth part of the book, they'll actually have, if this is comparison, the 2 and 4, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 and 4 tend to have some contrasts. So in the stories in the first part of the book with the hawk and the pike, the fish, it's a lot about power. Contrast that with the stories he gets from when he goes with his flight with Archimedes the owl, when he has the stone that they get there's a forest conversation, there's a stones conversation, and then of course there's the story that the badger is just written. So, but those last stories that they're not just transfigurations. They're also, well, he is transfigured, but they're also different, but they're about wisdom and seeing the big picture. And so you see it. And then in the middle of the story are the chapters we're discussing now, the Robin Hood adventure. So in there, we get everything. This is the, it's not the climax of the story, but it's the key, the connecting link of the story. It's the top of the mountain in the story. And it's one of the few stories that has 3 chapters. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I really had to, when I first kind of went through this and went back through it, like this part, I feel like I had to, maybe because it starts off with Robin Wood and I have such a preconceived notion of Robin Hood. And so you're fighting it a little bit as an audience member. And, we meet characters that are familiar, but then there's like a little twist that White does on it. That's like different than I think if you were introduced to Robin Hood through a movie or something, right?
Well, so take yourself back to when the book is written. Errol Flynn's Robin Hood is around. I think Bugs Bunny's, and Errol Flynn shows up in a cameo at the end of the Bugs Bunny one. I think that if it's not right there, it's real soon.
Yeah.
So in the 1950s, there is the BBC television show called Robin Hood. So with the Errol Flynnness of the Robin Hood is somebody you should be thinking about, because that is who White, maybe not exactly Errol Flynn himself, but that's Howard Pyle's famous Robin Hood book has already been out. It's the book that T.H. White probably would have read as a kid or as an adult. So it's all there, and there we go. Okay.
Yeah, and then it's cute because it's like the UDs you've been running through, so you can keep subbing the H and the W anyways. But this is also kind of I think we should talk maybe about like the archery, because there's a lot of parallels there. I think in not just training, but it really kind of starts to show I don't know, foreshadowing sort of, but like personality and how they interact with one another in their adventures, and how Marion, I really like how she calls Robin and the man babies, because as a female instructor, I can kind of relate to that. And so I was curious as to, I know you've written so much when you did your dissection in the Wandering Waits and on this chapter, like you really break down so much of it. But yeah, let's jump in.
Well, first off, this is our second archery started story. And this one's a little different, but remember when we first go meet Merlin it started because they shoot the arrow, and something grabs it and flies away. Now, it is, if you read the 38, 39 versions, it is by Madame Mim's,
Cabin in the woods or whatever. Yeah, her house. Yeah.
it's her house, and they end up there. And so there's all of that, and that's going to show up again. But it also should take you, which is kind of a fun, small thing. But if you go back to the very, very first chapter of the book, it says Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then they took academic classes. And then in the chapter 2, in the afternoon, the program was Mondays and Fridays, tilting and horsemanship. So that's that large chapter we've seen already where they tilt. Grummore Grummerson and King Pellinor tilt. Tuesdays is hawking. Well, the hawking thing is, remember they lost the hawk in how we find Merlin and all that. Wednesdays is fencing. We don't necessarily have a story about fencing. Okay. And then Thursdays is archery. And so every Thursday is our archery day. Well, now we take what they learn on Thursday, and now we have a very, very real opportunity to learn more about it. There is some funny lines in there. Sir Kay is so confident about his archery abilities, but they're both good little marksmen, and they know what to do, and they warn that you should always shoot high in battle because you might get somebody in the back rank, and of course Robin and Little John have a contest. I don't know how far you want to go yet in here, but there's obviously a lot to say about education in this particular chapter. Because as well educated as you'll notice that there's a reference to the boys and their educations, and they should be a little bit better. It's in the next chapter. The version I have is it's in the next chapter, but very famously, Robin tells the battle plan to all of his captains. Then he says the exact same words a second time to his captains. And then the captains walk over to their groups and say the entire thing Robin just said twice. And that, of course, is the value of rote memory in a society that doesn't write. And you hear it, you memorize it. And if you don't mind, this is important. To me, this is a more important lesson than it was when I was young. So you're an instructor. I'm an instructor. One of the mistakes we can make is, so if I ask you, and I write this in an article, so that's why it's fresh in my head. What movie won the first Academy Award? It wasn't called the Academy Award yet, but it was Best Picture. Well, everyone listening can Google it, and it's the movie Wings. So I said, what's the first movie to win an Academy Award? You Google it, the answer is Wings. And then you promptly forget it. So that's closed loop education. Did Abraham Lincoln write sign the Morrill Act, which gave us land grant colleges in 1862? The answer is true. So if you said true, you got it right. If you said false, you got it wrong. That's a closed loop question. Well, the problem with that is that land grant colleges include the Utah State University, where I went to school. Without Abraham Lincoln in the middle of the Civil War, great insight to worry about the education of this great nation, I don't know if there would have been a Utah State. So an open loop is where there's more to that thing than just 1862. So one of the things that I like about this chapter is when they're talking about education, now I'm sliding back to chapter 10, is that Little John and the guys, they're not anti-education, but they're open loopers when it comes to education. It's real nice to know how that this is a bow and these are arrows and this is a quiver. That's great. But how you use it and how do you utilize it and what you do in battle, that's a different set of learning skills. And so, and I like that. So whenever I talk about this book, I always find myself scurrying back into my educational hat, but
Well, of course.
it is a book on
Book on
education.
education. Yes. Yes. And we've talked about rote memory before, way back, but I'd like to take a second with it as well, because I found that often, like how you just mentioned, Robin says, here's the plan twice. And then, he hears them repeat it twice. And I know that whenever I thought I had given really good directions and I don't ask my student or my coaches to repeat it back to me of what they're going to do with the class today or what the plan is, if they don't repeat it back to me, then it's my fault because I haven't made sure I communicated clearly, because I've had them repeat things back to me and I'm going, that's what I said. I can't believe that that's what you think I said. So I'm like, okay, how can I improve on this? And it's allowed me to be a better communicator, to kind of ensure like I'm repeating it twice and then I'm asking them to repeat it. And it's kind of fascinating, I think, if we all listen differently or maybe repeated things differently. So what you're saying is this, because there is a high percentage of the time where they're maybe not even listening, or I'm not explaining it right, whatever the case may be, but where it's not repeated back to me correctly. So I don't know how many people do that, like have people repeat things back, but I feel like a lot could be solved and avoided if we ensured that that type of communication was more common.
It's very good. I'm a member of this thing called the Guardian Academy. That's that thing right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the phrases we use is tap, tap, tap. And tap, tap, tap comes from a Stanford study where the students are asked, can you hear this? Can you hear that?
No,
Can you hear that?
not really.
I don't know how to do it. So I'll go. Okay.
Okay.
Do you hear that? Okay.
Not really. I only see you clapping. Wow. That's weird.
You hear that? That's right.
Our YouTubers are going, wow, but Dan's doing a lot of stuff today.
Okay.
It's weird. I couldn't hear
I'll
the
just
clapping.
go. I'll just go.
Tap, tap, tap.
Ba ba ba. Okay, I'll go ba ba ba. And in fact, it'll be too easy this way. So the idea is you tap out a song, and
Oh, yeah.
the chance, and then before I tap out the song, I'm asked, what are the chances that Mimi's going to pick up on this? And I say, oh, I'm pretty sure she will. Usually, people are convinced that 50% of the time you're going to figure out the song. So tap 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 tap. That's one horse open sleigh. Now, there's no way. I mean, if I had to tap that, the chances of the song are between 3 and 5%. But my certainty that you will know what I'm trying to tap is at 50%. After you do it a few times, instead of it dropping, actually my certainty goes up over time.
Wow. Okay.
But I'm 45% wrong at my best.
Yeah.
40, and then now I'm 65% wrong, and yet I'm still convinced that you understood what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So when we used to coach football, we realized something interesting. You could only send in 3 pieces of information with the player. If I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I write 56 blast, go on a long count. Okay. Oh, and move Mimi from right tight end to left tight end. Guy runs out in the huddle and goes, Mimi goes to left tight end. Well, what's the play? Because under stress, people can handle 3 data points. When you get the 4th, they remember the 4th and drop the first 3. So this is actually kind of a brilliant system that everyone knows the plan in its entirety up front. Of course, just because everyone now knows the plan, I'm pretty sure that certainty has issues too, but that's not for our concept here. We're in chapter 10, not chapter 11. So, yeah, I think this is another one of those great chapters about learning.
Mm-hmm.
That Yeah, okay. I was about to jump into Mr. Twitey, but we'll hold that. That's a story coming up in a while, but we'll hold
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Well, because we have kind of that dynamic. Well, I was wondering if you could maybe explain this to me. It's where he's talking about if you've ever attempted to lift 100 weight upwards from the ground with all of your stature to help you, you will be able to appreciate the steady force which the two greatest English archers were able to exert, not upwards but horizontally. Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm.
To be able to pull.
Pull it.
Now, these are not compound bows. These are traditional long bows.
Okay.
So that if it has, so if you have a longbow that's your height, like mine would be 6 foot, so I'd have a 6 foot U bow, YEW. And for me to pull that, let's say it's 90 pounds, but I'd have to pull it this way, hold it, and then release.
Okay.
With the compound bows we have today, I mean, of course, the laughable how much more if you've shot a modern bow, I mean, it the modern bow still has battle applications in this day and age because it's a
Yeah.
silent killer, and some of these bows can go a long ways. The arrows, I should say, not the bows. So yeah, so it's a great little chapter. I do want to say from a personal note, unless you have any questions, I would like to say one interesting small thing.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. I got to get to the picture. Oh, I have Dennis Nolan's book in front of me now.
Yes.
Darn it.
Me too.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Then I can actually. So if you got the plate that's on page 161, that plate, that's who we're dealing with in this particular book.
Oh.
Uh, so those are the anthropomorgi, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're bad. They are bad people. They're not
Yeah,
good people.
they're definitely look not so good. It looks kind of like Gollum
Yeah, well, that's actually not bad. Yeah, that's pretty good. Um,
after the ring did its evil, right?
yeah. Okay. And now an interesting thing is if you go to page 144,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when they return. Now, I don't want to ruin the story, but folks, young Arthur, young King Arthur, he's going to break his collarbone in the story. So you got that picture there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, not bad. Huh? Let me show you something cool. You ready?
Yeah.
So that is the original drawing
Oh,
of the
yeah.
artist. I bought that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm in the market for buying some of the plates from the book, Dennis Nolan's book. But they
Okay.
want, I mean, the amount they want is just, it's not a good price.
Mm.
Even though I'm a collector of things, just because someone has something doesn't mean I should pay that price.
Right. It's got to be
But
reasonable.
I don't think Mr. Nolan is still with us because I've reached
Mm.
out to a number of times in the last few years,
Oh,
and
okay.
he did get back to me almost immediately every time, but recently not so much. But
Oh.
I'll still chase him down because, or at least his heirs, because I'd like to get that whole. I'll buy everything in that book.
Of course you will. Yeah, see, this is the only book I own that has like things in it and notes. You make me feel like such a good student, but I'm still learning to be a good student. So I'm not quite there yet, but you're helping. You're helping with it.
Yeah. So that's it's a yeah. The plates don't exactly fit in the book where they should be. Those two probably should have been swapped,
Hmm.
but
And in that the anthropomorphi, it showed them like poisoning the arrows. Is that what that was?
oh yeah, they're horrible people, and it get it's I think it disappears by the American version. It's
Mm.
clearly not in the Sword and the Stone in the 1958 version. They've gotten rid of it to a single Warren or a single Griffin, where in the version we have, it is a fight to the death.
Mhm.
And Kay, by the way, saves Arthur's life. Uh, I ruined the story for everybody. Okay.
It's okay. My presumption is that everyone that's following us at this are fans as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so obviously on education, it's interesting because like you said, they learned their arrow. skill, and now they're having the application test. And it kind of goes back to what you were just even saying, like under pressure, how do you perform is different than when you're practicing or in a learning environment. It's completely different. And I think for the boys, they're Kay's always wanting to show off, right? But I think there's this pressure because of the environment they're in. It's his adventure, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Kay's adventure. And then also, I feel this could just be me, but a woman like Marion being there ups the ante of pressure and the desire to show off. And it kind of makes it a little bit, the environment changes a bit, I feel. I don't know that they really talk about that, but I feel like
it's also she is King Arthur's first crush. He says clearly, this is the kind of woman I want to marry.
Yes.
And for a historical reference, it's fascinating because T.H. White is watching a television show one day, and whatever it's called at the time, but Britain's Got Talent, this little girl called Julie Andrews goes on there. He sees her and he says, that's who I think Guinevere should be. And that is part of the story while Julie Andrews was in Camelot. Yeah. And then of course, Camelot, she was also in Henry Higgins' My Fair Lady. And they screwed her over on doing the movie for My Fair Lady. And I thought it was a terrible choice. Audrey Hepburn was not a good choice, but what do I know? But instead of that, she lucked into this little show, 2 shows called Mary Poppins and the Sound of Music, which she basically did in 1 year. That's a pretty good year for anybody.
It's a good year for her and us.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad... And then she became queen. She was Queen Clarice of Genovia. In
Princess Diaries. My sister has watched that 1,000 times. So but I am a big Julie Andrews fan. So
I just watched it last week because I think it is a great movie. It is. Now there's a few parts, but yeah. So it's just one of those interesting things that the reason I bring that up is we meet Maid Marian and Arthur's like, she's got woodcraft, but remember, he knows he's going to be a squire. He's going to be at best, and to Sir Kay. So Maid Marian is a great choice. When he becomes king, the rules change. Now you get a good chance if you ever get a chance to see the movie Excalibur. I think it's John Bourne film, 1978. I think it's Liam Neeson's first movie, and Jean-Luc. I'm getting fruit flies from my eggplant here. Jean-Luc Picard is in it. He's the father-in-law. But he's not named Jean-Luc
Patrick Stewart. I knew who you meant.
But, it's a marvelous, because in that particular movie, you can really see that they are attracted to each other, and you don't always get that in Camelot. You really don't. Yeah, it's an arranged and comfortable marriage, and but in Excalibur, it's a little different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's just an idea that when you sit back and you look at the entire the 5 books, if you include the Book of Merlin, the arc of who Arthur loves is interesting because in one of the later books, it's very obvious that, and it's even said that Arthur loves Guinevere and Sir Lancelot more than anybody else in the world. And of course, whatever happened, and that destroyed the entire kingdom. Yeah. Yes,
I think I'd shared with you many times how crushing those other books were for me, and I wish I could unread them. I was like, well, this is not an upper. Like, I think I should have just stopped at the Sword and the Stone.
Every time Lancelot turns things around, it gets worse.
Yeah, I mean, it was really sad. But okay, so because in this chapter we've got, like I said, Marion is saying, you guys are being babies. Robin throws down his bow and sat cross-legged on the ground. Dryad made Marion to sit beside him, and his face was puzzled. And they start talking about Morgan the Fay. Yes. And fairies, or they all call him Morgan the Fay something different, right?
Yeah, because And you'll see that same exact thing show up in the Harry Potter books. You don't say Voldemort.
Right.
Yeah, so that is a strong tradition. The Irish have it for sure. I know the English, obviously, they have it. We're talking about it right here, where you don't name evil. When I was young, you wouldn't say Satan or the devil, not because it was swearing, but because people were afraid you would.
It would come about.
Yeah. Well, and there's
Someone
so
likes
many.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah, Beetlejuice, and what's the thing you're not supposed to say in the mirror? Um,
Oh, something Mary wrote.
yeah,
I know
yeah,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah. Red
yeah,
something or oh gosh.
yeah, 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 whatever
My
that
God.
is.
Whatever
Yeah,
that is. Yeah.
because
I didn't like horror films, so
yeah. Well, and it sticks with us. I mean, even in the theater, if you watch Only Murders in the Building,
I do.
uh, you'll notice that that break a leg still shows up, and the
Yes,
idea is
yes.
that you don't you want to confuse the wood nymphs or whatever, uh, and they leave a light on for somebody or something like that. Yeah, these
Hmm,
are
hmm.
the things we all stick with.
Superstitions.
Superstitions, and you'll notice they're very uncomfortable mentioning the names of the evil ones.
Hmm.
Very, very uncomfortable. Um, in fact, they get in trouble if you mention, if you say the name of something and it turns out to be named one of the evil ones, they come
Hmm.
and attack you. Yeah, very, very interesting. Um, I freely talk about my death a lot, Mimi,
Hmm.
because 66 and I'm not stupid. I can do math. Um, and I know that I probably have more yesterdays than tomorrows. So I'll mention my death, and you'd be shocked at how often people go, "Oh, don't talk about that."
Oh, that's a
Like,
very Chinese thing too. They don't like to talk about death.
yeah, but
Yeah,
you know, uh,
culturally.
yeah, but I still have to have a last will and testament, and
Yes, I
my
know.
life's done. And yet we can, if we talk about, so it's interesting because everyone will poo-poo. You'll read this book and go, "Oh, those ignorant people," and then, "Hey, I want to talk to you about at my funeral. Don't talk about that." Here, what? I'm going to knock on wood, so I'll dull the wood fairies. I'll break
Right.
a leg, Yeah, it's so these are things. So one of the fun things about doing a deep exploration of a book like this is you begin to put the mirror up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many
you're
of these?
right though. In this film, you're like, oh, in this film, in this book, you're going, oh, it's just a fiction. So, why are they scared to say it? But
Yeah,
you're right. In daily life, I mean, there's so many superstitions and traditions. I mean, and some of us will call them, no, this is my routine before I go to a game. And, if this is my prep, this is, but a lot of them are superstitions and like your lucky socks or whatever you hear people
I've got them all,
share.
and I've got rituals I do.
Rituals, yes, rituals. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, yeah, and I do rituals, and I do one thing that's interesting. I think as an athlete, is I consciously attack my rituals. Like I learned, and I learned that Phil Maffetone thinks the same thing. We had a great conversation a few months ago uh, about not getting a haircut the week you compete, and it's weird because there's no well, there's two sides of it. First, if you can't find if you compete every single weekend, so you're overtrained anyway. You're overdoing it. But the other thing is people get thrown off by little things. And
Mm,
so I consciously will get a haircut the week of the nationals. I will
mm.
consciously put on different socks than I did. Consciously, knowing that these are my lucky socks and swapping them out for something else just so I can overcome it because it is super. Well, it's. I mean, my mother, wonderful woman, and I still love her. And there's no, she's been gone 43 years. I still love her, but she was Northern Irish, and she had heavy, heavy superstitions. And as bright as she was, her favorite book as a child was the Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, a book on Plato's book. That's, you know, you don't hear that much from little Irish immigrant girls, but she still was, she was, you know, you had to be very careful about what you said. Well, why is that, Mom? Well, you don't want to be calling Satan up or whatever it was, or the devil. And it's interesting because we see this deeply in this story. The other thing that was very unpopular in the version we're reading, okay, is the fact that the Robin and his merry men and the boys and Maid Marian, they jumped the anthropomology. They didn't even give them a warning, and they just started to slaughter them without any warning at all. But the reason is because they used poison arrows. So if they did have a fair fight, it wouldn't have been fair. Mm. That was White's editors were asked to change some of that, and White pushed back on that also. But you know, you're also trying to sell a book, and you know, you're trying to sell.
Yeah, I find that really fascinating because it's something that doesn't seem to go away with time, the superstitions. And like you said, we would read this as fiction, but then we really carry over a lot of that. And I know you're very scholarly and you are knowledgeable, especially about religion. Do you feel like that has a lot to do with some of the crossover of like, I mean, so I was raised Catholic, so there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of things that I feel like was instilled. I felt purposeful at the time, but you know, I went to Catholic school even as a child. So I'm curious as to like where you see those parallels.
Yeah, and that's always. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, yeah, I even see it on my Instagram account. I mean, there's Jesus Christ is. Especially, you know, now we're doing this the day after Halloween. This is Boxing Day. It's the Feast of St. Stephen. And I just feel like, you know, Jesus of Nazareth of Bethlehem has become a ball in a ping pong game, you know. He was, I mean, he certainly fits immigrant status very well. His parents had to flee when he was young. And yet then somebody else to say, you know, Jesus says to, you know, literally, I've seen a sign that said this. It said, Jesus says to kill fags. I can tell you from the heart, gentle listeners, from the heart, as a theologian, as a person who knows sacred scripture, that's not true. He never said that. A fag is a British term for a burning stick, which later became a cigarette.
Cigarettes, yeah.
And so I can honestly say that, you know, and I saw the sign, so I'm standing by. But to see that, and that's so, I'm sure that the person who had that sign was probably happily in church this weekend sometime, completely fulfilled in their own, you know,
righteousness.
Not righteousness, but rightness.
Rightness. There you go. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the superstition, even if we humans decide to become completely, to slide over to agnostic and then to slide over to the entire human race into atheism, people would still be doing something at a casino. You know, you'd be sitting there.
Yeah, the lucky machine.
And the lady next to you would, you know, always, you know, keep a red ribbon around her left hand, or they'd rub your left arm 3 times. Yeah, because it's rituals often spring from what we perceive in a series of events to be a factor.
Yeah.
You know, you just do. You can't help it. You can't help it as a coach. You can't help it as when I was in high school, before games, I sat in a chair, and the manager came over, real nice guy, and I had issue with my nose bleeding in games all the time. Not bleeding in this way, but bleeding this way because of all the breaks. It would
Oh,
bleed. And so I used to put athletic tape on it as a Band-Aid. And then I had my buddy would sit next to me here, my other buddy would sit next to me here, and we never lost a game when we sat in the exact same places. I had my nose taped about 20 minutes before we went on the field. And then we went to that big county championship game, and we didn't sit in the same places, and I didn't get the tape on my nose, and we lost. Why did we lose? Because I didn't have tape on my nose. Not because we fumbled, bumbled, and stumbled and threw
right, right.
No, it's because I didn't get tape on my nose.
Yeah. And I think there it is too. We don't want to hold ourselves to blame or accountable for some of the things that we don't want to see maybe the truth too. It's easier sometimes to say, oh, it was because of this. I mean, I'm again also guilty. Like when I was a competitor, I'd have to retie my shoes like right before I performed or right before I competed. And it was like, if I didn't retie my shoes, I swore it was going to be a problem. But it was also practical because I wanted to make sure my shoes were tied.
Exactly.
It's
And
my OCD.
I consciously, with my athletes and myself, break those rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because I'm trying to break their belief in God or superpower or whatever. I'm just trying to break it because it's always at the Olympic trials or the nationals or the worlds where you can't do your ritual the way you always wanted to.
Yes.
And so, yeah. So, you're going to win some local crap meet with all your rituals, but at the next level, you're not going to be able to do some of those things because of some places they march you out into the stadium. The first time you're in the stadium is right before the gun goes off or they call your name or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the warm-up room is back there. You're not out there. And weightlifting meets, you're not allowed on the platform until they call your name. And the confines of the back of the loud warm-up room, it's the warm-up room is loud. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of bustle. You can miss a lift and just shake it off. But when you're on the platform, man, everyone's quiet and they're all watching. So you better have a different set of rituals for the bigger meets than you do for the low.
That's you doing the Connect Four at your athletes. Well, but also we don't really want to give power to those rituals so much as like ourselves, just kind of knowing like we are able to accomplish it, not because I tied my shoes or because I listened to this song right before.
The goal is that the rituals have no power. The truth is we give them a ton of power.
Yes. It's so true. It's so true. So clearly, back into the Sword and Stone, like they're all in the belief that we don't say these things, and this is how it is. And does that have to also do with the time period? Because obviously, quote unquote, in the different times and stuff, there was a lot more superstition before more science and things like that, right? Plus, there's magic, so. Or not really.
I think we're worse.
We're worse?
Listen, there are actual people who, I have a former student who's a member of the Flat Earth Society.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Folks, the Earth is not flat. It's not. Okay. And the physics don't work for it. Okay. And I think this way, a lot of countries in the world are turning, far, far right again. It's because I need someone else to give me my answers, and that's of course, always an issue. I trust, or worse, I want someone who looks like Dan John to answer all the questions. For some reason, because I'm male and white, I have more answers than some other people, which makes no sense to me at all. Because if you saw my desk right now, you'd be shocked at what a mess it is. And what my life is sometimes is total mess. So I think we are superstitious now as ever. There are people that do not acknowledge global warming or the human component in global warming. It's like, of course, there's also people that think that we never did get on the moon. It was all a TV show.
Conspiracies.
There you go. Okay, since I was young, you know what I believed about John F. Kennedy? He was shot by like Lee Harvey Oswald because I could make that shot easily. And don't believe in conspiracy theories because I know that we humans, first off, aren't very good at it, and then secondly, no one can keep a secret. No one can keep a secret.
You're right. Nobody can keep a secret. That should be the proof right there for us all, right?
There's a new documentary coming out about this Soviet submarine we tried to pull up out of the ocean during the Nixon administration. And I was telling somebody I was with, I go, oh, I knew all about that as a kid. E.H. Bean Trucking and Rigging. They bought this new. How do you know all that? Because no one could keep a secret. Everybody knew we were going after that sub. And I was only 16, 15, 14, and 13, So we just don't keep secrets, Whenever I found out that a secret was hidden for a while and finally came out, I am absolutely amazed. It was called the Ultra Secret when I was younger. Now it's called the Enigma. That movie with Benedict Cumberbatch about that machine that could read the Nazi messages.
Is that the Imitation Game?
Imitation Game. That is one of the few times I can ever remember a secret surviving, and it was 30 years.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. So, I don't know how we got on these tangents. Sorry.
Oh, because no, I love tangents. But it is true. Actually, you're 100% right, as usual, right? We are probably worse because now we have proof of things and then we refuse to believe them anyway, even though we have solid proof. But it is fun to kind of compare ourselves to some of the characters in the book and what they're going through. And when we think something is so far-fetched, but we kind of narrow the lens and it's like, actually, this is very relevant.
Well, I used to tell my students, we were talking about the medieval period, and students very often think that the people in the Middle Ages were like stupid or dumb or something. Like they had different information that you
right.
have. For example, if we would have taken a 15-year-old girl in the Middle Ages and stick her in a forest she would probably, she might not thrive, but she would survive. In
right.
fact, probably pretty well. She would have the skills and the crafts to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I took a 15-year-old Catholic schoolgirl from, were you in New York in Catholic schools or Florida?
Oh, Florida.
Okay, little Mimi, her sophomore year in high school, and stuck her in the middle of the Everglades. I mean, how long would you have survived?
I don't do well in nature in general, so not so good. So, my father would be fine. Me, not so much.
You know how to make 20 different dishes, but you don't know how to use the food for those. Yeah. So
yeah, I can't. I don't even know how to use a flint.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I think there's something to be said for us losing a lot of skills that we rely on technology and things that have come very easily to us. And when those are taken away, it allows us to kind of take a moment to have some appreciation for how far we've come, but also what's come before us.
So you bring us back to what I said earlier about open and closed loop education.
Yeah.
If all your education is closed loop, it's real hard when things change. My dog's here to visit.
Hi, dog.
Serious? Can we say hi? Serious, say hi.
Serious, like Sirius Black?
Sirius Black, yeah. I didn't think he'd make it through this Christmas, but he's still with us. So doing okay. He misses Dad.
Yeah. Of course. And I know we have to wrap up soon because we're already at the hour, but do you feel like most education now is closed loop in school?
Ever since the Bush administration came up with this idea that no child left behind and we'll give tests, if you're assessing students purely on a test, there's value to it, but it's a closed loop. And what you'll notice that before that, education, I think, was moving into a great direction, where you had to kind of show your knowledge. In fact, the Guardian Academy, live to learn. I end every podcast, I end every Wandering Weights Let's all keep on lifting and learning. The problem with the closed loop method, getting the answer right on a test, is that, and I'm sure in the martial arts traditions, you probably use both still, right? You probably, when someone moves up from belt to belt to belt, there are some closed loops they need to do, right? Is it true? Show us this, show us that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I guarantee there's also an open one where you might have, I don't know, 5 people attack the person at once, or I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. It's actually, I think, a little bit more for us and how we do and structure our learning. It's a lot more based on like them really showing us what they've learned through the last several months and what it's taught them about themselves. And also like how the proficiency of the actual move is less important to me than what they've learned, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, and as a track and field coach, every time my athletes go to a track meet, the loop opens again. Now they know that we're going to do stretch 1, 2, 3. We're going to do kick and pick. We're going to get a good orbit. We're going to drive we're going to do these. Here are the 20 things I've taught you in the last year. And now, that's how you can never understand announcers at track meets. So it's
like the Charlie Brown teacher.
What? You're up. Oh, okay. Up in the ring, and it's raining, it's snowing, the wind's coming from the wrong way. You didn't get a good night's sleep. The loop popped open, and it keeps opening. And your job is to answer the question that day. And to me, that's what education's all about. You obviously need both, but then the application to real life is what it's really, truly all about.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Gosh, I have more questions for you, but you just summed everything up so nicely. And I feel like that's how we should kind of end this. And you have promised to stay alive to continue through this book with me. That was your original promise. So I'm sure we will talk again very soon.
Yeah,
I hope.
I like it. In fact, so this particular chapter is these 3 is as you're reading them, if you can kind of get yourself as these are the capstone chapters. Something happens in these 3 chapters that changes Kay, that changes Wart, that changes even Merlin. They all change after these 3. Now, what happens to Ward is interesting. He gets that wonderful thing that helps learning so much. It gets broken. And then Sir Kay gets rewarded. So it'll be kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Well, I appreciate you greatly. Thank you so much for taking time with me as always. So much fun. So everyone keep reading The Sword and the Stone and feel free to send questions as well. But in the meantime, Coach Dan John, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.